This is my favorite room in the house. These are original Babette Fosters. You know, they stopped production on those in the 80s.
I do love a good sconce. I don't know, there's definitely has a weird energy. Do you guys feel that? Do you guys get this overwhelming sense of death and doom, or is that just me?
Yeah, like someone's gonna jump through the window and start stabbing us in the eye.
It's kind of like Scooby-Doo meets Spinal Tap meets The Evil Dead. I mean, you're pretty spot on with that description. It pretty much is exactly that. Anybody that I said the Foo Fighters are making a horror film to just immediately started laughing, because why on earth would we do that?
I'm sure it was more about that they thought it would just be a great idea rather than that. I mean, it sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, you know, to add a bunch of fake blood and some chainsaws, then you got yourself a Hollywood hit.
What could go wrong?
Right?
It's based on an idea I think you had, Dave. Is that right? Can you tell me where that came from?
Yeah, well, it actually, a friend of mine put the idea in my ear, and my initial reaction was that it was terrible. That it wasn't something we would ever do, and why would we spend a bunch of time making a full-length feature film? But the house where we recorded the last record, Medicine at Midnight, was a big, old, creepy house. And I thought, all right, once we're finished with the album, we'll just bring in some cameras and shoot something quickly, very low budget, for our audience to get a kick out of once we put out the record. So I thought, okay, well, the basic concept would be that the Foo Fighters are tired of using the same old studios. We'll move into this cool old house, start recording, only to find that the house is haunted. And then I become possessed and murder everyone over creative differences, and then go solo. So it's based on a lot of really ridiculous Spinal Tap-esque cliches, you know, creative tension in the studio, singer goes solo, horror, the devil. It just all sort of wound up in this big jambalaya of bullshit, and it was really fucking fun to make.
Have either of you ever had any supernatural experiences in your own life that maybe you were drawing on for your performances?
Have you? I don't know.
God, I wish.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for a ghost to appear, but hasn't happened yet.
No. I did live in a house that had some creepy shit go on in Seattle. And I lived there for like 2.5 years. But it wasn't so bad that I would like want to move. I just sort of stayed there and felt creeped out for 2.5 years. Yeah. And then before then, I really had no interest in the paranormal world at all. Since then, I haven't had anything happen again, but I don't not believe in it.
So what happened in Seattle? Can you tell me that?
Seattle, I moved into a house in 1993 that was actually a new house built at the edge of this forest. And little things started happening, noises, motion detectors going off. And then that kind of ramped up into these, you know, every now and then a door would sort of open on its own, or you felt like someone was right behind you at all times when you were downstairs. And then I had these reoccurring nightmares of this old woman standing in the living room staring at me. She's barefoot and in a gray sweater and this weird sort of blue skirt, and was dirty. She was sort of covered in mud and her hair was all fucked up. But I had this recurring dream of this woman in the house. And it got to the point where you'd hear footsteps in the kitchen, and there was something going on there. Outside of the dreams, I never like turned a corner and saw some fucking ghost staring at me, but it was definitely weird.
It sounds like great inspiration. Nate, I'm really interested to know, when Dave came to you and the rest of the band with this kind of idea for this film, what was the reaction?
I loved it just because it was so audacious. Like we're 100% unqualified to make a movie, like a scripted horror movie. But we knew it'd be fun, of course. And then I just kind of hoped that like people would see it for what it is. Like, well, you know, you guys, like you're trying, you know, like you went for something you had no business doing. And you know, it's like we never took lessons to learn how to play music or be in a band. So, you know, that turned out okay. Maybe we could do a movie too.
How much preparation did you both do beforehand?
We did have one tape, which is where all of the actors and the producers and the directors sit around a table and just read through the script. Something none of us had ever done. That was a pretty clear indication that we had a lot of work to do. Although I don't know how much preparation anyone put into their performance other than one member who went and took acting lessons without telling anybody.
Who's that?
I'm not going to say. You'll have to see the film and see if you can judge.
So who was in charge of getting Lionel Richie in the film?
Well, Lionel's scene was written into the script by the screenwriters without them realizing that I actually know that dude. And so when I read the script, I laughed hysterically at that particular scene and picked up my phone and texted him and said, "Hey man, we're making a horror film. Do you want to be in it?" And he said, "Absolutely, my brother." And I think he was like on the set of American Idol when I was texting him. It was pretty fucking hilarious.
And what about John Carpenter? He plays the studio engineer, right? I didn't just imagine that.
Again, a very coincidental hookup. Our lighting guy, Dan, who's been with us for a million years, also went on the road with John Carpenter and did his lights when John Carpenter performed his music in front of live audiences. So when Dan found out we were making a horror film, he said, "Hey, I know John Carpenter. You should email him and see if he'll make a cameo." And of course, I thought there's no way that he would ever be involved with something on this level, you know, a Foo Fighters horror film. So, I said, "Hey, my name's Dave. I'm in a band. We have a mutual friend. We're making a horror film. Want to be in it?" And he emailed back and said, he said that we had taken his kid's band on the road like 15 years ago. And so to return the favor, he not only was in our film, but he wrote the theme song. So he's a stand-up dude for sure. That was a big ask. And of course we'd never ask for him to write the theme music. But then he did. And it's fucking incredible. We hit the jackpot.
What about Foo Fighters? I know there's a special Studio 666 album sort of in the pipeline that you've talked about. Can you tell me more about that? When's it coming out?
Well, when we're done with this interview, I have to fucking run next door and finish it. Because I think it's coming out at the end of the week. You know, in the film, there's a band that recorded in the house 25 years before the Foo Fighters, where the singer goes insane and kills the whole band. So I'm making their lost album. And it's fun to go into the studio and not be myself or be the Foo Fighters and assume the personality and the sound of a band from 25 years ago. So I got to kind of decide what they sound like according to, you know, the era in which they were a band. So it's, you know, it's fun. It's been fun. And it's, you know, it's kind of a metal record because it's a horror movie. It's kind of got to get some metal in there.
Yeah. Who did you want it to sound like?
I mean, there's elements of like 80s thrash metal, and then some of the vocals pull from that certain way people were singing in the early 90s. We're the fucking kind of go like that. So it goes back and forth from like, so it's pretty fun. And then of course it's like full of riffs and huge drums and shit.
And what about kind of non-Studio 666 music? Is there any in the pipeline beyond the film?
Not at the moment. We've been too wrapped up being movie stars to write rock songs.
Full.
Yeah.
And a Foo Fighters tour. You're coming over to Europe in the summer, aren't you? I think. Can you tell us a bit about that? Any special plans?
We're going to be bouncing around the planet for the next 10 months, I think is the plan. When everything shut down in 2020, I think everybody felt the sting that, you know, we'd been on the road pretty much our entire career. So when it was taken away from us, everyone wanted it back even more. And we begged for a tour. We begged for a full itinerary. We begged for shows. And then we got this itinerary. I'm like, oh my God, what were we thinking? Holy shit, it's a lot of shows. It's a lot of shows. I think there's 70 or more, something like that coming up. But hallelujah, brother. I can't wait.
We'll be everywhere.
I wouldn't be doing my job as an enemy journalist if I didn't also ask you about Liam Gallagher, Dave. Tell me about working with him on his new song, Everything's Electric.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't do it in person because I love being in the same room as Liam Gallagher. It's like putting a fucking quarter in a jukebox and just turning it up with that guy. It's fucking great. I love him. I think he's fucking great. Obviously, he's an amazing singer and he's a fucking star. You know, he is one of the few last remaining rock stars. But he, you know, he was making a song with the producer Greg Kurstin, and they needed a beat, which I think was described as something sabotage-esque. And so I fucking served it up. I served up the beats. And the fucking single turned out great. I love that song. I honestly do. I was dancing to it the other night.
So catchy.
In my friend's fucking living room. It's great. I was strictly behind the drums. That was it. The rest of it was Kirsten and Liam. But I'm used to that. If you watch the documentary Get Back, the amazing new Beatles film, watch Ringo as he sits behind the drums like this, waiting for everyone to like get together and come together and write a song. That's what it's like to be a drummer. But in this case, I just basically, you know, there was a beat and it was carved up into this cool song. So yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get much Liam time for this one.
What do you think of Liam Gallagher's new hat that he had at the Brits? Have you seen that yet?
I did not see the hat. Oh, I did see the hat. It's like an Elmer Fudd
Yeah,
hat.
but don't say anything about it. End up at a pull quote, and then you got a fucking battle.
There
on
you
your
go.
hands. Yeah.
All right. I loved it. Great hat.
Well, I'll let you run next door and finish off that album now. But thanks so much, guys. It was an absolute pleasure chatting to you.
Thanks, man. Take
Nice
care.
talking to you later.